Welcome back to this week's edition of Let's Talk College Football. And today we're going to be looking at the scenarios that Utah can actually still make the Big 12 championship and potentially the college football playoff. Utah has lost their two most critical games by far, but there still is a little bit of a chance if things fall a certain way. So going over first, this is the scenario that I think would be very best. Obviously, Utah's got to win out. If they don't win out, they're not making it. And then we would want Texas Tech to win out in this scenario. So Texas Tech beats BYU, and then BYU loses a second game. And this sets us up for a good scenario. So did they lose to Cincinnati? If it wasn't to Cincinnati and Houston didn't lose and Houston didn't win out, that's a path to get Texas Tech, Utah. The other path is if BYU's second loss was to Cincinnati, they lose another game and Houston doesn't win out. And so that leads to another Texas Tech versus Utah scenario. So we pretty much need, you can tell by looking at these different different rules right here. We just want as many teams at 7-2 as possible because Utah has a really good strength of schedule, which that's going to be the tiebreaker if there's, 4 or 5 teams tied. So that's the good scenario for Utah. Do you want to go over the scenario if BYU does win out or get one loss, Ethan?
Definitely. So obviously, again, Utah has to win out here. So we're going to go Utah wins out. And then the Texas Tech win out. We're going to say no here. So did BYU win out? We're going to go right here. We'll say yes. And then if Utah, and then did Houston win out? At this point, it's pretty likely. I don't think Houston will.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I think this is like the clearest path. But like as a Utah fan, it's unfortunately it is BYU winning out. And it is Houston losing one more game. I think that's like the most clear path for Utah to get into the conference championship game. But there's other ways where like probably in the fun one where we like, oh, we want to face maybe.
You never want your rival to win out, have an undefeated season. Even if Utah would get to play them in the conference championship, they'd be a lock for the playoff at that point, regardless of what happens in the conference championship. So that would just be annoying as a Utah fan.
So there's a few other ways we can get in the conference championship game and not face BYU. BYU doesn't win out, and so we go no here. Did BYU lose the second game? Yes. Was that second game to Cincinnati? For this scenario, we'll say yes. And again, did Houston win out? Which again, I think is something that is bound to happen. I think they're going to lose a second game. I think it's actually a point where that scenario isn't even possible. Since Houston did lose to West Virginia, I think they're firmly in like they can't get in the conference championship game if these scenarios pan out for Utah. There's ways they can pan out for themselves, but there's a lot more going on. That's Utah Tech. And then again, if Cincinnati lose the second game? No. And then that's Cincinnati Utah, which I think would be one of the funner ones as well. I think facing Cincinnati again, that's a really good team. But I think it's a team that we are kind of built to be able to beat. Just how well we were in the trenches and on the ground for them. And then there's other ways that are just.
I think most Utah fans.
It doesn't matter.
I think most Utah fans would feel pretty good about the Cincinnati versus Utah rematch. But scrolling over here, unfortunately, just based on the odds, Texas Tech versus BYU is the most likely scenario because they have the best chance. Even if they both finish 8-1, say Tech beats BYU, but that's their only loss, those two are going to have a rematch in the conference championship. So we need to be rooting for this scenario to not happen in any way possible. This Texas Tech 8-1 versus BYU 8-1, that's the disaster scenario for Utah because then there's no chance. You're no longer in a tiebreak with anyone. It's just the top two. And then they're obviously in a tiebreak with each other, but it doesn't matter. They both are getting in.
So at that point, what's your ideal situation, Landon? Like, is this
my ideal situation is probably Tech is a good team, so I wouldn't want to play them. My ideal is one of the more unlikely ones, probably the Cincinnati versus Utah matchup, following that path, which is pretty convoluted. But that Cincinnati versus Utah would be really nice because Cincinnati would be the only 8-1 team. And then we'd have Utah, ASU, BYU, Houston, and Texas Tech all at 7-2. And in that case, Utah has the best strength of schedule. So it would be Cincinnati versus Utah. That would be my ideal. I also definitely would not mind this one down here, this BYU versus Utah with BYU 8-1, because then at that point, I think there's a decent chance if BYU were to lose the Big 12 championship badly, I think it's possible they get left out of the college football playoff still. Even if they'd be 11-2 at that point, I think there's a chance that they kind of get screwed over and get left out of the playoff potentially.
Yeah. For me, it's kind of like it's like one of those weird situations where outside of BYU, Tech scenario is they have UCF and West Virginia left on their schedule.
They're
So
not losing. Their
their
only way
only
they lose
loss.
is to BYU, truthfully. So if Tech beats BYU, we have to be rooting hard for another BYU loss or else it's over.
Exactly. So my fear is, I mean, the BYU has some rough schedule. They have after Tech, they have
They had
TCU,
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati, and they have UCF. Those are three good teams. UCF obviously the weaker out of the three. But my fear is that BYU is going to win those games. Like
Yeah.
I think BYU is more likely than not to win three out of their four remaining
Mm-hmm.
schedule.
I'm
And so I
concerned
think
about that.
so it's like for the sake of Utah getting into the conference championship game, and which is the only chance we're getting it to get into playoff, I think like BYU winning out is probably my ideal situation because it just
Mm-hmm.
eliminates all the craziness that could happen. Because even if BYU doesn't win out, Texas Tech doesn't win, like Texas Tech loses another game,
Mm-hmm.
or Cincinnati loses another game, it's just a little scary about okay, like I don't know where that second loss is coming to BYU.
Yeah, see,
If
that's
BYU did,
definitely the scary part. I do see what you're saying. The cleanest part for Utah to make the college football playoff, the Big 12 championship, only three things would have to happen. Utah wins out, BYU wins out, Houston doesn't win out. If those three things happen, Utah's in the Big 12 championship. And I feel like those three are decently likely. Like it's not Utah winning out, I feel like is decently likely. BYU winning out or BYU winning out outright is a bit less likely, but it could happen. And then Houston, they're not winning out. So
well, Houston's is like eliminated in any
yeah, because
situation.
they've already lost to Tech in West Virginia now with that upset that just happened. So yeah, so they're out already. So
to have a lot. Houston would have to have a lot to happen for them to make
yeah,
it, which I don't think it will. So I
mm-hmm.
think unfortunately
That makes
those
this
two
scenario more likely here in the bottom right, where BYU loses to Tech. That's interesting.
it's just one of those
Yeah,
weird
because
ones,
BYU's
man, where it's like
Tech would have to lose versus someone else, which just like
I just don't think it's happening.
yeah, I don't think so as well.
But I
Yeah,
think
dude. We
an
gotta
interesting
either
one.
just root for as many 2-loss teams as possible, or BYU needs to win out.
I think something interesting would be also if this Tech team. I mean, this Tech team is damn good. Like I
Yeah,
think this Tech team is like nothing. Again, I'm not trying to like take away from BYU. Like I think this BYU
I
team
am. That
is
BYU team is so lucky, bro. They should have
they're
4
lucky, but they're
losses.
a good. They're a good team. I'll say they're a good team. I mean, any team that beats Utah is a good team.
Yeah,
Um, but I'll say I think this Tech team is a great team, and so I think that it's one of those situations where this Tech team, especially with game day going there, could be pretty. It could be a pretty rough game. Um, and that could really put BYU in a spot where it's like, oh, like I mean, you don't know how good you are till you lose. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
It's like if they go out there get absolutely manhandled by Tech, I mean, there's a chance where BYU kind of just starts fumbling the bag where they lose.
See, I
They
definitely
go
think
bounce
there's
back.
a good chance where they're playing at Cincinnati. Remember, at Texas Tech, at Cincinnati. That's two very tough games. They won't be favored in either of those games. I feel like Cincinnati, just the way their team is constructed, they have a decent chance of beating BYU, I think. I don't think BYU can replicate what Utah did with that man coverage and the pressure. That was pretty insane for Utah, and I don't think their offense is dominant enough either to replicate what
Yeah.
Utah did.
And then don't forget about TCU, man. That TCU team is
Yeah,
good.
don't sleep on
That
TCU either.
I think that TCU team is like a team that's built to beat BYU. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
BYU's strength, I believe, defensively is is their run stop, and TCU
They
can't
just
throw the
pass. They
damn
only
ball.
just pass. Yeah. Yeah. Well, honestly, Utah's playing some good ball right now. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Utah is kind of playing the best ball at the end of November, but still doesn't make the conference championship, unfortunately. At least it would be a lot of good momentum for next year.
Yeah, I mean, like to kind of talk about that, like none of these situations do happen. Say Utah wins out, but Tech and BYU just end up 8-1, which again, it's unfortunately the most likely thing to happen. Um, the bowl games that we're predicted to right now are pretty cool. I mean, the
Yeah.
Alamo Bowl, I think it's Alamo Bowl like versus
See, the
USC.
Alamo is an interesting possibility because if Utah and BYU don't make the conference championship, I almost guarantee they play in the Alamo Bowl because it's a Pac-12 team versus a Big 12 team or a former Pac-12 team. And they showed they would do that last year with BYU versus Colorado. I think there's a really good chance that Utah and BYU could play again in the Alamo Bowl if both miss the Big 12 championship.
And then another likely situation that ESPN has us at is Vegas Bowl against Iowa, which I think is going to be a fun one as well. I mean,
I
Utah
wouldn't really
Vegas
want to
is
watch that one. Well, I would watch it, obviously, but that wouldn't be my ideal matchup playing Iowa.
Oh, I definitely agree, but I mean, it's the Vegas
The
Bowl
Vegas Bowl
and
would
the
be fun,
Alamo
though.
Bowl are the two best Big 12 uh, bowl games that are available, obviously outside the playoff.
Yeah.
So I would think probably, obviously, making into the playoff is the big one. Utah did shoot themselves in the foot and kind of took
Mm-hmm.
the ropes out of their hands. But I think if we went out here, I mean, we did everything we could, and I think this Utah team is primed to win out. So I'm excited to see kind of what they do. I mean, the next three games, they're going to be tough, but I think they're all
They're all
winnable.
very winnable.
And so we're in a spot where, hey, if chaos happens again for Utah getting in that Big 12 championship, hey, just do what we did last time, 2022,
Yeah.
um, and kind of earn it and show them that that's where we were meant to be there and go win it.
Mm-hmm. Love it, dude.